I'm looking at my whiteboard right now, I listed all of these different areas that I'm trying to excel at and to be the best I can be at. And it can start to apply a pressure that can be consuming. Hi, my name's Devin. Today I own several multi-million-dollar companies. We started with $5,000 in a credit card. I don't know the easy way. I only know the hard way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Whiteboard Entrepreneur Podcast, where I give straightforward advice to fuel the entrepreneur in all of us. I'm Devin Dickinson, and today I want to talk to you guys about a topic that I personally have been going through in my own life recently. And I was just going to share this with some friends and family in kind of a smaller venue or whatever. I wasn't going to put out totally online, but I think it's really real in my life. It's something that total transparency I'm still working through, but I like to be transparent. I like to, people to understand what I'm going through as well. And I think there's probably a lot of you that have probably better at this than me. So understand I'm teaching this, but I'm still learning this as we go. But the topic is going to be up here on the whiteboard behind me, and it's perspective versus pressure. Perspective versus pressure. And if you're someone that's pursuing your dreams, this is probably going to land home with you, because it does with me. And it's something I think that we struggle with, right? Because as someone who's pursuing their dreams, entrepreneurs, anyone who's ambitious, anyone out there who's trying to go on to the next level in their life or taking on new challenges, you apply these goals, you apply this pressure on your life for performance and to be able to do certain things and achieve certain things. And I think that's good. To be very clear, like I've done a ton of podcasts about hey, don't ever accept losing, setting goals, all of these things, right? Like I'm someone who really believes that it's appropriate to apply pressure on your lives. But I also believe that we have to have perspective. And so I'm going to share with you a piece on perspective. This morning, one of the organizations I'm involved with, it's kind of a humanitarian organization across the U.S. Actually, you can look them up. It's called Feed My Starving Children. It's an incredible organization, 5-star charity navigator. Little plug for them right now. If you're looking for a place to spend your money wisely, it's a great organization. I encourage you to check it out. But it's called Feed My Starving Children. But this morning, I got an email. The CEO sends out kind of little updates or whatever. And I got this update, and it was a video of this woman, and I believe she was in South Sudan, which is going through a really difficult time right now. And she's standing there, and she's holding a tin cup, and it's a rusted tin cup. And they interviewed this woman, and her story was such that if she was lucky and she had a good, successful day, she was able to find work. And that work would provide her enough money and or resources that she would be able to fill that tiny tin cup. And it was basically like an old soup can, rusty soup can. She'd be able to fill it with rice and beans. And that is what she would use to feed her family, not her family. And that was a successful day. And I thought, wow, I actually don't have pressure in my life. That woman has pressure. Right? That woman has pressure. And it was super appropriate because, I have a lot of things going on in my life, and each one of them, I have goals. Each one of them, I have aspirations, and in turn, I apply pressure to my life. And that pressure results in stress, anxiety, loss of sleep, sometimes depression, frustration, all of these things that this pressure sometimes results in. But once I got perspective on this woman's life, the pressures of this life fell in line. And it's not an excuse for me to take off the pressure of performance, because I have things that I'm responsible for. But once I had the perspective, all of a sudden, some of the anxiety I was free from, right? Some of the other stresses, depression, stuff like that, I was set free from. And again, I'm working through this, right? Like I haven't figured this all out. And so me sharing this with you is part of my therapy probably, and part of how I'm figuring things out. But I want to encourage you as well to think about the things that you have in your life, the things that are pressure, right? I'll even talk about, my kids, right? Like there are people that I know that are like, well, my kid didn't get into this school, or, with me, I love sports. My kid didn't make this team, or my kid didn't start, or all of these things that like stressed me out. Or you wake up in the middle of the night and I go, wait a second, why? Like good. I'm glad that they want to do great. I'm glad that they're trying and striving to be the best that they can be, and that they're applying appropriate pressure. But I hope they have perspective. I hope I have perspective, because just because you didn't get into an Ivy League school, at least you get to go to school, right? At least you have all of these abilities and opportunities in your life. And, you think about like the idea of sports, right? Sports, a lot of people apply pressure. I apply pressure. And you think like, oh, well, do you literally is your pressure that you have to be the absolute best every time at everything and everything that you ever accomplish? And then you have to go Division I, you have to be the best there. You have to be all conference, all state, all region, all American or whatever. And then from there, you got to be pro, and you can't just be a normal pro. You got to be the best at the pro. Like, when does it stop? And again, I'm not saying not to challenge yourself, right? Like, this is the thing. This is a balance of pressure versus perspective. Like, we have to push ourselves forward to be the best that we can possibly be, but at the same time have perspective on life and perspective of the gifts that we've been given, perspective of all the blessings that are already in our life, and not allow it to be an excuse to not give our best, but also allow it to provide the perspective so that it doesn't ruin you, so that this pressure doesn't destroy you and cause this anxiety and this depression, all of the things that pressure can bring. Because when you apply pressure to yourself along with perspective, I think you begin to have balance. And we were talking right before we did this podcast. One of the questions is, well, Devin, where do you think this pressure comes from? And I was like, I thought like, yeah, we have bosses, we have coaches, we have different people in our life that will apply pressure. But like, really, if we want to be totally honest, almost all real pressure is probably from you yourself, right? It's internal. It's applying these expectations and goals. And again, don't hear me what I'm not saying, right? Those can be good. They are good. They're necessary to drive us, right? But we start to put this weird pressure on us. And it's like the Joneses, right? Like everyone's like, oh, well, you're living in that neighborhood, you're definitely going to be keeping up with the Joneses, right? Or I don't think the Joneses are thinking about you. Right? Like, let's be real. The Joneses are probably thinking about the Joneses. The Joneses are probably thinking about themselves and all the pressure that they put on themselves. You're thinking like, oh, how do I keep up with the Joneses? Because they just bought a Ferrari. And the Joneses are thinking, well, how do I keep up with the Smiths? Because they bought a jet, right? And the Smiths are thinking about, how do I keep up with someone else? Because they bought a G8 or whatever. I don't know, that really nice jet, right? So, but it's like, really, let's be honest. The Joneses ain't thinking about you. We're thinking about us. Like, we're the ones that we have this internal pressure that we're applying to ourselves. The Joneses are thinking about themselves or somebody that they're trying to keep up with. And so this pressure becomes internal. And again, should we strive to be our best? Yes. Should you have goals? Yes. Should you work hard and put expectations on yourself to be everything that you can possibly be? Yes. How do we keep that from consuming us? Is by perspective, right? Pressure, great. Perspective balances that out. So I think that we can have a healthy view on how to live our life. A healthy view on pressure is always balanced by that perspective. I told you I'm working this out, and even as I'm talking to you, it's helping me. But I hope that this helps you, right? I know that if you're watching this, you're probably someone like me who gets frustrated sometimes, who has pressures that they put on themselves. I'm looking at my whiteboard right now. I listed all of these different areas that I'm trying to excel at and to be the best I can be at. And it can start to apply a pressure that can be consuming, a pressure that can lead to depression, a pressure that can make you unhealthy, a pressure that can make you envious, or all of these unhealthy habits. But when I look at that board and I compare it to the video that I watched this morning, I have pressure, but I have a healthy perspective as well. I'm Devin, and this is a Whiteboard Entrepreneur Podcast. And I really hope that you and your life can have the right balance between pressure and perspective.